Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by Timothy Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. We are on, this is the very last part of the exposition of the susceptibility of the traits of character to change through discipline. The very last few lines of page 29. After at the end of the last session, we spoke about the middle path, the median, the wasat, in terms of the good traits of character. They lie between excess and deficiency. The very last paragraph speaks about the role of the guide, the sheikh, the murshid. This then is what is required, and it is a thing very possible to achieve. Certainly, the guiding sheikh must make all anger ugly to the aspirant, and all withholding of wealth, and should not allow him any concessions in this regard. For were he to make the slightest concession, the aspirant would use this as an excuse to retain his avarice and anger, imagining that he possessed only the permitted amount. If, however, he were to try with all his might to pull these traits out by the roots, he would prove able only to destroy its strength and restore it to moderation. Therefore, the correct course of action is for him to intend to uproot it, which will permit him to change it to the required level. This secret, however, should not be revealed to the aspirant, to the murid, for a foolish man might be deceived by it, and think that his anger and his withholding of his money were just. A general exposition of the means by which good character may be acquired. بيان السبب الذي به ينال حسن الخلق. You have come to know that goodness of character proceeds from an equilibrium in the rational faculty brought about through sound wisdom, and in the irascible and appetitive faculties through their submission to the intellect and the law. This equilibrium may come about in two ways. One of these is through divine grace, Jud Ilahi, and completeness of innate disposition, Kamal Fitri, whereby a man is born and created with a sound intellect and a good character, and is preserved from the powers of desire and anger, and are created in him moderate and submissive to the intellect and the law. Thus he becomes learned without an instructor, and disciplined without being subject to any discipline, in the manner of Jesus, peace be upon him, the son of Mary, and John, the son of Zacharias, Isa wa Yahya alayhim as-salam. In the hadith of the Isra and Mi'raj, the Prophet ﷺ met with Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and Yahya alayhi salam, Ibnay al-Khala, maternal cousins, and all the other prophets. May the blessings of God be upon them all. Yet it is not to be deemed improbable that certain things should exist in a man's nature and disposition, which can be obtained through acquisition. And that's really the normal, way of acquiring traits, good or bad. That's the normal way. It's acquisition. In a sense, people, since there are no prophets nowadays, and there will be no more prophets really, since the Prophet ﷺ is the final prophet and Islam, the Quran is the final message. And it's been 15 centuries. There used to be prophets, sometimes even many prophets at the same time. That's it. The religion has been completed. Islam is the universal religion. Those who either decline or are reluctant or don't, there's no need to be reluctant. You entertain the idea, just go ahead. It's about submitting to the will of God, really. So people will be, in a sense, have a tabula rasa. Uh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them. They know both paths, the straight path, the good path, the good behavior, and the bad, shunned behavior that leads to sin, grave sins, and ultimately uh, could entrap the person to the degree that one would end up in hellfire. So it's really acquisition. Again, yet it is not to be deemed improbable that certain things should exist in a man's nature and disposition which can be obtained through acquisition. Some children are created truthful, generous, and courageous, while in others the opposite characteristics have been set, so that in this case good qualities can only be acquired through habituation and association with those who possess them, and also through education. The second, back to acquisition again, is the acquisition of these traits of character by means of spiritual struggle and exercise. By this I mean the constraining of the soul to perform the actions which necessarily proceed from the trait desired. For example, a man who wishes to acquire the quality of generosity must oblige himself to do so, to do generous things, that is, to give of what he owns, and must continue in this wise, affecting this thing and struggling with his soul until his nature conforms to it, and it becomes easy, at which point he will have become a generous person. Similarly, in the case of the man dominated by arrogance, who wishes to inculcate in his soul the quality of modesty, he should persist for a lengthy period in imitating the behavior of the modest and struggling against his soul until such behavior becomes one of his traits and part of his nature, at which time it will come easily. Every one of the qualities which the law deems praiseworthy is acquired by these means, the end point of which is that the act should be pleasurable. For the generous man is he that takes pleasure in giving money, not he who gives it reluctantly. And in the same way, the modest man is he who finds modesty delightful. Um, so we will read more about the acquisition, but in the first, this is the second way. The first way, uh, a child, when it says a child being created truthful, generous, courageous, whatever the a child is raised always in a social context. Uh, the only the only ones who were created without a human social context were Adam and Eve, peace be upon them. And in as much as we acquire its acquisition, acquire language, not the linguistic faculty, not the ability. That's innate. That's basically create. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this ability in us. But in the case of Adam, not only the ability, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught him language. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها. We acquire language from our social context. My parents, uh, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings on them. Uh, Palestinian Arab parents, and the language, of course, is Arabic. If the listener is from Malaysia, originally Malay, then the language that he or she acquires is Malay, Bahasa Melayu. If you are born in to parents, if you are born in the United States, not to immigrant originally, basically, all those who are not Native American are immigrant. But if they're not immediately immigrants and the English is spoken at home, then it is the language that is acquired is English. Of course, in the Old Testament, it is Adam himself who names the things on his own. That cannot be the case. So, in as much as you acquire language, you also acquire character from your own social context. So you learn from your family, you learn from things that you listen to. Uh, Stressing generosity. If the family, if your parents are generous, were generous when you were raised, and that's a character that the character trait that you will acquire. If your parents stress truthfulness, and you live a long life, and your parents pass away, and they have never lied to you, they have never lied to anyone. So that's something that you attain, acquire. So this child being born generous, and another child born otherwise, or a child born truthful, what teaches children to lie? It's the punishment, or seeing that this is okay, that the behavior of the family. Punishment: the first time a child breaks something, you ask who broke this, uh, and a child says, I did. There's no reason why the child wouldn't do that. It depends also on your tone and your previous relationship with the child. Did you punish the child before? Are you angry when you basically ask the question, or simply your normal demeanor, in a nice, polite way? Child say, I did. Now, if you punish the child, the next time you ask a question like this, the child might lie, and you are the reason why the child lie, and that's an acquired trait. But if your reaction is things do have an age that ultimately they expire one way or the other. Just like us human beings, we have an age, a time limit. There's you might want to take care of things before they break, before they get broken. But once they are broken, don't lament, do not punish, just deal with it in that fashion. I think this should be highlighted, that it's really the social context, and the social context is not only the parents. If you are exposed to other people, then they are part of the social context. And if you even if good character is inculcated in you, once you are an adolescent, that's really a sensitive time. You become 13, 14, and now you'd like to build your own character, or be independent, as they call it. And it depends now on your friends. If you happen to have good company, really good company in terms of morality, in terms of spirituality, in terms of um, even being achievers in their studies. If it's the other way around, you are not doomed, but definitely they could change your character, and you are like the average. You will birds of feather flock together, and if you are not a bird of feather, you will become one, meaning that you will acquire the at least some of the traits of your friends. And the notion of friendship should be explained really, but as I said, it's a sensitive age, the adolescence. And even when people are old, they could learn, they could acquire good traits. People who became Muslim during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they were very old, they changed course. They submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The religious traits of character cannot take firm root in the soul until it has grown accustomed to every good habit, renounced every evil one, and persevered in this, in the wise of one who feels a love for and takes pleasure in beautiful deeds, and loathes, disdains, and loathes and is hurt by ugly ones. As God's emissary, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Prayer has been made my delight." This is in the context of the three companions who went to the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asking about his worship. And in the hadith, as if they have belittled it, as if they have belittled the worship of the Prophet ﷺ. One of them pledged to pray every night, throughout the night, for the rest of his life. One pledged to fast every day, meaning from dawn until sunset, uh, throughout his life. So other than Ramadan, he will continue fasting. Of course, we have a couple of days when we are not supposed to fast. For example, on the days of Eid, we are not supposed. The day of Eid, we're not supposed to fast. Those on Mount Arafah, on that day, they are not supposed to fast. So here we have two pledges. The third one pledged not to get married. He pledged celibacy, and this is not really an Islamic. It's un-Islamic. Let's call it this way. The celibacy is mentioned in the Quran, that those who invented it, those who obliged themselves, uh, so they did. So it's not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who required this of them, and they did not live up to it. And it's a long story about the, uh, you know, um, all these scandals about monks and what have you, and priests. Many, every year, you have major stories like this, and lawsuits, and so in that context, when the Prophet ﷺ learned later on about what they have pledged, he was angry. And the Prophet ﷺ said that I do pray at night, but I do sleep. I do fast, but I do break fast, meaning that there are days when he does not fast. But and that he he got married, so no celibacy. I think it's the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said that of your world, three things have been made dear to me that he loved: woman, perfume, but now here, this is really, and prayer has been made my delight. وجعلت قرة عيني في الصلاة is this hadith. Yes. As long as worship and the renunciation of forbidden things are felt to be unpleasant and burdensome, their performance will be defective and cannot bring one to full felicity. Certainly, to struggle to preserve with them is a good thing, but only in comparison with abandoning them, not in comparison with doing them willingly. It is in this context that God subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, seek help in perseverance and in prayer. And truly it is hard, save for the humble minded. وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين. And the Prophet ﷺ said, worship God with pleasure, and if you cannot, then with perseverance. For perseverance in something which you dislike contains much good. اعبد الله في الرضا فإن لم تستطع في الصبر على ما تكره خير كثير. The hadith was verified by At-Tabarani. Neither is it sufficient to obtain the felicity consequent upon good character that obedience to God should be found delightful and disobedience unpleasant at some times and not others. Rather, this should be constant and remain with one throughout one's life, so that the longer a man's life extends, the more solid and complete will be his virtue. This is why the Prophet ﷺ replied when asked about felicity. He said, the chain of narrators is weak, but inshallah, of course, it's the meaning is inshallah sound, from the hadith of Ibn Umar, the narrator. It's a long life in the obedience of God. Imam Ghazali commented by saying, this is also why the prophets and the saints disliked death, for this world is the sowing ground of the next, meaning they would like to sow more good deeds, more worship, more spirituality, more obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more submission. The more acts of worship one performs through living a long life, the greater will be the reward, the purer and clearer the soul, and the stronger and more deeply rooted the good traits of character. For the sole purpose of acts of worship is to influence the heart, and this influence will only grow strong when they are persistently repeated. It's still a lengthy entry and discussion, and inshallah we'll leave it to the next session. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.